You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Monster House presents.
Monster Talk is proud to be a part of the Airwave Media family, home of such shows as Fork in the Road, Small Things Often, and Therapist Uncensored. If you'd like to advertise on this show, contact sales at advertisecast.com. Around the world, people report monsters, but are they real? Join the detective of the impossible, Joe Nickel, as he walks you through investigations to reveal often surprising natural explanations behind some of the most famous cryptids and legendary animals ever reported. Using scientific skepticism, meticulous field work, and historical deep dives, Joe Nickel seeks out hidden clues and real-world candidates that sometimes reveal that even the most unlikely monster stories may have a basis in reality. The Science of Monsters is the first book from Monster House LLC, the publisher of science shows Monster Talk and In Research Of. The revised edition is now on sale and includes corrections and suggestions from you, our listeners, and now readers. Sales of The Science of Monsters directly benefits Monster House and its podcasts, thanks to the generosity of its author. Pick up the revised Science of Monsters today at Amazon.com, available in paperback and Kindle editions.
First, I'm going to ask the biggest, hardest question that I think anybody that listens or watches this is going to ask. How do I know this isn't bull, Zach? You know what I mean? Like, this is a big deal. I'm not sure if you're fully grasping, like, how substantial this discovery could be. Like, how do I know? I'm just being candid. I don't want to offend you, but it's like, I looked at the photos, I zoomed in, I showed it to a bunch of guys, we checked internet resources, we checked a bunch of stuff. They're all like, yeah, it looks legit. So I'm rooting for you here, but like, how do I know it's not like a hoax? Like what is there to go on here, Zach?
Well, there's the pictures, and I know in this day and age we can't trust pictures.
Sure.
It's like, from my knowledge of the situation, this is basically like I caught Sasquatch.
Yeah, totally.
So, I can get you the area where this happened.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite exact, but that stretch of road is pretty not inhabited.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. Let's dig into the photos, because I'm going to screen share with you, and I want to look through the photos, if that's cool, and you can sort of tell me what the animal was doing and what was happening. And this is insane.
It's actually quite unlike anything we've ever seen before.
A giant, hairy creature, part ape, part man.
In Loch Ness, a 24-mile-long bottomless lake in the Highlands of Scotland. It's a creature known as the Loch Ness Monster.
Monster Talk.
Welcome to Monster Talk, the science show about monsters. I'm Blake Smith.
And I'm Karen Stolzno.
That opening clip was an excerpt from a YouTube video from media adventurer Forrest Galante covering the claims of a mysterious guy named Zach, who says he and his dad hopped off to Tasmania a few weeks ago and found a living Tasmanian tiger on the side of a rural road. This week, we're having a look at that news story plus two others that cover topics that we love at Monster Talk. We have two cryptozoology stories and a UFO story. So check the show notes for links to some sources if you want to dig deeper on your own.
Monster Talk.
One quick correction. During the thylacine discussion, I may have accidentally confused the names of the people who were involved in the story. The person doing the interview with Forrest is named Zach. The person who forwarded the images to Forrest is named Henry. I don't think either of these names are the real names of the people involved, if there are even two real people involved. So many mysteries. Let's move on to the discussion. Okay, welcome to Monster Talk. Today we're going to be doing monster news for May. Apparently it's been a big month for stuff that's adjacent to this show or directly relevant to this show. Today we've got Karen on. Hey, Karen.
Hey, good to be here. And we've got Matt as well. He's joined us again. And when you suggested this topic, And you suggested, let's talk about the thylacine news. I was like, which sighting are we talking about?
Yeah.
Because it seems like there's a sighting every other week.
There's a thylacine all the time. Yeah.
Nice one. This one I think is particularly interesting, not necessarily because it's true or anything like that, but it's a little bit different. I mean, usually you see footage and it's some Aussie just out in the bush and they think they've seen a thylacine and they've got a kind of blurry picture or a dog or something like that. This one's a little bit different. So did you guys check out the photographs which are floating around online at the moment?
There's photographs and then there's a video. The video is from, I'm not sure how to say the last name. It's Forrest Gallant, but it might be Galante. But he's
Galante is how I think I've heard it.
Yeah,
but...
he's been on TV. He's had TV shows before and stuff, and he's doing a lot of YouTube stuff now. And he's become sort of a clearinghouse for thylacine. His big thing is, could it still be alive? Whatever the species is. Trying to find species that have been thought extinct and they're still floating around. Or that's the idea anyway.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, and I think he's firmly in that camp of wanting to believe that the thylacine is still around, which we are too.
Well, absolutely. And he's got a biology background, as I understand it. And he's in the video he's very excited. He's got a very, entertaining presentation. But it's
he does.
He's skeptical, he says. And he presents it as though he's crowdsourcing it. What do you guys think? And, not making a claim, but he's got the video of the guy who has come forward with the images, who called himself Henry. And you know what? He's wearing, to hide himself, he's wearing this big bundled up outfit. And I can't stop thinking he looks like one of the kind of bandits from Borderlands.
Bury me with my stuff, hell!
He really does have a costume that looks like that. You can only see his, where his eyes would be, and they've got a black bar across his eyes like a 1970s Scandal video on the BBC.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, it kind of makes you think the guy's got something to hide.
Yeah, he does. The fact that, this is nonsense is what I think he's hiding. Yeah. But isn't it lovely nonsense?
Not showing his face. Not showing his face. And it's like, I thought it was a scarf at first wrapped around his face and neck, but it looks like maybe it's a hoodie. I don't know. It's all a bit strange.
It is quite strange. And he's willing to come and do this interview, and the whole interview is available on YouTube. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But what, it's again, this is a throwback because it reminds me so much of, how things used to be in ye old good times, late 90s to early 2000s, where someone would make a claim they'd seen a Bigfoot or a giant cat or whatever. And then everybody would descend and try to figure out, could they, falsify the photos? Could they prove the photos were not real? And here, they are, if they were clear, they'd be very impressive. But every one of them looks like it's been through some sort of photo manipulation. It's incredibly blurry. And the best one's probably the one where there's eye shine. But ultimately, over at Reddit, which is, I guess, the new place for skeptical analysis. I think they probably talked about it on Metabunk too, but the Redditors were pretty quick to
doing
say,
the rounds.
This thing looks just like this really cool thylacine doll that a guy put together. And the doll was a loving work of artistic creation. It was never presented as real. It was always presented as, mysterious and cool looking, but a doll. He even posted how it was put together. Which is fortunate because a lot of people were able to use his step-by-step doll creation photos to analyze the relationship between this video and the images in that video, and they are really similar.
Well, yeah, I want to add too, and this is just, to me, I'm not really good at analysing this kind of data as much as you and Matt certainly are familiar with these kinds of things, but to me it looks like in every picture it's a bit different.
Yeah,
it looks like a different.
If it's a doll, it's posable, But you're right; some of the colors look different. My best guess is these have been processed; they're digitally processed. Even in the video, Forrest asked for, why is the EXIF data different on the photos? And he was like, well, I passed them on to another guy who sent them to you, so he saved them locally. That's probably, they've been modified, so.
Just saying, if he passed them on, as long as he sent the original photos, the EXIF data is still going to be there. So it had to have been screenshots.
Yep, Exactly.
That were taking stuff. But anyway, Blake, did you see the text I sent?
With that image in it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where did that come from?
That is Photoshop's new beta. It's an AI,
the AI plugin. Yeah.
generative thing. But that took me, 30 seconds to create that. That if you feel like you can put in show notes. And it sure doesn't look exactly like a thylacine. No, it doesn't. But I created 15 more within 2 minutes.
Yeah, it certainly looks
shows
better
you what
than
you can do.
It does. I honestly feel like if these were AI, they probably would be clearer. But
yes.
But that's the thing is you could take a base image from this guy's model, or you could do some generative stuff in Photoshop and make it look a little rougher, make it look a little better, make it whatever. It's we're in an age where photos aren't enough.
I was just wondering, with one of the pictures, and like the one that you referred to with the glowing eyes, could that potentially be a real live animal, a dog that's been painted? That was something that Matt and I were discussing.
It could be.
Because again, all the pictures look a little bit different. Some look blurry. I don't know. It could even be material or something, or landscape.
Yeah, I mean, it could be or it could be. I'm saying he was basically saying I was in the dark. I was standing about 15 feet away, and so as he's sitting here on this one magical night, taking these photos with his older generation iPhone, according to him, amazingly, the animal seems to go through all the classic poses of a thylacine. It's like it's putting on a show.
Yes.
It's like, let me lie down,
and
let me stretch my jaw, let me look straight at the camera.
Well, kind of suspicious to me as well, just his nationality. I mean, what was he doing there? And, why is he out in the dark? His story just doesn't really make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Why did he fly into the wrong airport?
Yeah. So many questions. Yeah. There's so many inaccuracies.
Like he's going in search of a thylacine, and this is what he comes up with. I mean, it really does seem like it's a hoax.
Yeah, it really does. And I feel like that's a very comfortable place to land on this particular story.
I think more is going to come out over the coming weeks, and it'll be revealed to be a hoax.
I think it will be ultimately a hoax because I'm in that camp. Like I have so much certainty that this animal is extinct, but I have to admit,
sadly,
all it would take is one alive one or one corpse, a fresh corpse, to prove that's not the case. And every now and then we do get a survivorship of some weird animal that we thought was extinct, but this is a pretty big animal. This is a 40 to 60 pound marsupial canid shaped creature, and they're even if they were alive, they're being outcompeted by foxes and feral dogs and all kinds of other animals. So it's even a little dingo looking, the picture, the main one with the glowing eyes. But I think we'd be seeing a hell of a lot more of them. Even though they can be solitary creatures, we'd be seeing more of them. But it's just the whole story's suspicious to me. It's completely sus, as the kids would say, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But, as we say, photos are not enough, right? And so I think that's a lovely transition into our next news story, which is a topic we've covered many times. And you may recall early on in our show, we interviewed Darren Naish for the first time. And he was alien big cats, as we call them, large. There's nothing unnatural, but they're not supernatural, but they're weird, large carnivorous cats in the wrong geographical area. And that's been a mainstay of England.
They didn't come from a UFO.
Right. No, exactly. Right. I mean, there's not to say they couldn't. They're not that kind of alien big cat. Yeah. But people have reported seeing
distinction to make.
Well, it's interesting because observers see a big black cat, and they're almost always black. And
yes, like a panther.
It's kind of like UFOs in the sense that it's really hard to tell scale when you're watching something cross a field, unless you can find out exactly where it walked and, see the height of some geographical feature.
You're in a car, you're moving fast. Yeah.
I mean, and again, I've talked about this so many times, and I'm a big, I'm sympathetic to people who say, I saw this thing and I couldn't get my camera out in time. Because I try it all the time with wildlife around here. And by the time I get my camera ready, the animal has moved on or stopped doing the cute thing it was doing or whatever. But DNA doesn't wander off, and which is lovely. So this news story is that it was coming from a BBC site was where I first saw it, saying that we have DNA evidence proving that a big cat does live in the UK. This is Now it's interesting because where the story comes from is a woman named Sharon Larkin Snowden, who is, I'm reading a quotation about her, has dedicated her life to the discovery of big cats in the county and now believes she has infallible evidence that proves their existence. So if you're like me, and it would be really cool if Bigfoot was real, but it would be really suspicious if the first person to find it was, like, say, Matt Moneymaker, right? I mean,
someone who's
he's
dedicated their life,
right? But what happened is there's a program at the University of Warwick, Professor Robin Allaby, and they have a program there because they do a lot of bat DNA and other things. They got an industrial scale DNA analysis set up. They will, for 100 pounds, analyze your DNA sample. And
that's cool.
Yeah. Oh, it's quite cool. I think it might be in our future that we try to reach out to Professor Robin Allaby and see if we can talk to him. But Larkin Snowden sent in this sample, and it turned out to have a big cat DNA in it. It legitimately does. Now, they don't know the specific species, but it really is the right kind of DNA for these large. It's in the group Panthera, right? So that's which contains lions, tigers, panthers, but not bears.
Oh my!
So only a tiny bit of DNA showed up in the sample, but it's just a sample from something that had been predated upon. So it's not that surprising. There was only a little bit of DNA. All these news stories are coming from the BBC. It's covered widely in the British papers. I've got some of these quotes I'm reading are coming from other articles. I'll put all these links in the show notes. But it is interesting because both times in the past 4 years that they've found something like a DNA sample, and I'm putting air quotes. They usually put confirmed, and there's air quotes around the word confirmed. But in this case, there's no air quotes. It does look like this is confirming that whatever the sample was did have legit Panthera DNA. But that doesn't prove that it wasn't added. I'm not saying that she hoaxed it. I'm just saying that it'd be nice to get a follow-up or, more, environmental DNA or other kind of samples. But there's no...
Yeah. Well, it'd be nice to know more about the actual sighting then, other than just that this DNA had been collected.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't seem like there's much information about where, when, and how, and why.
Yeah, it was on a sheep carcass, if I remember correctly, and that's not a normal prey. I guess around the reading I've had of it has been that around the island, they're assuming that most of these big cats are living off like roe deer, which are a small deer species in Europe. I say small, compare it to like American elk or whatever. But for sheep to be predated upon was unusual. Apparently, but that's all I really know about it, and the fact that it was coming from someone who's hunting big cats, which I'm glad people care. I mean, that's really cool. It's always one of those questions of there's no scientific reason big cats couldn't be living there, right? They can survive. The question is, if they are they solitary? Are they part of a breeding population? And there may be more than one species at play here. And again, that's, I think, what we talked with Darren about. That it's likely that there's more than one kind of not native big cat living in the UK. But how common they are, will they ever become an established species? That's up in the air.
Yeah, well, it's making me think, too, that we're probably going to get a lot of other people who are going in search of this creature and others. So if anything more comes of this, that will be interesting.
Don't you mean if anything Blackmore comes? No, anyway, don't.
But yeah, it's just interesting again that she's going in search of these creatures, and we have the same thing with the thylacine story, and Bigfoot cases. It just and in some on some levels, it makes sense. These are the people who are going in search of these creatures. They're going to be the ones who have sightings. But it's also suspicious too that, is it a hoax? It makes you wonder. But in this case, there's some evidence, and I'm sure there's more to come from this story as well.
I think so, and there's going to be some documentary coverage. And one of the shows that's looking into it is a TV show called Hold the Front Page, which is hosted by comedians. And that reminds me very much of how things that are unusual or fringy are treated here in the U.S. I mean, obviously we've, as a culture, have leaned really hard into the reality TV world where nonsense is presented weekly as being serious, which bothers me. And then the flip side of that is this is all hilarious, which bothers me. Somewhere in between is probably where I land.
Yeah, or it's a kind of a news segment that's tacked on to the end of the show, and just a kind of, just a lighthearted story to close with. Yeah,
I think it's a misunderstanding of how these topics are felt about by the public. Like, the public is often very serious about these topics. Sometimes, really serious.
These communities and organizations and groups of people who are to some extent obsessed with these topics. Absolutely, they see things very differently. To them, it's like this woman, a life's path to go in search of this creature.
If your goal in your life is to find proof of this thing, and if this is legit and nobody tampered with the sample, that's fantastic. Good for her, If she tampered with the sample,
she's found what she's
not that
been
great,
looking for. Yeah. Again, I think more's going to come out.
So those are the two big sort of cryptid stories that have been out in the past week or two.
So, Matt, you have a UFO case that you wanted to speak about, something that has crept into the news recently that you'd like to talk about.
Yes, our next hilarious story is kind of an interesting study that was done earlier this year. And what it is, there's over the last 20 years, there's been about 98,000 reports that have been cataloged in this open source online data set maintained by the National UFO Research Center, or NUFORCE. And they've kind of modeled how these sightings coincide with environmental variables. And we're talking about things like cloud cover and light pollution and proximity to airports and military installations, all those kinds of things.
Oh, neat.
And so, I mean, the thing is, it sounds very cool. The one thing that I don't like about it is it's the National UFO Research Center. They want to find UFOs. So it's a little bit like, thylacine, we're all kind of looking at the same thing here. But it's online and open source. So what they're doing is they're going through and kind of looking about what kind of environmental things are there.
98,000 sightings. That's remarkable.
Yeah, almost 100,000 in the last 20 years. And it's interesting because it's remained sort of level in terms of the amount of reportings. It hasn't gone up or down like you might expect it to. It's been pretty much steady. The other interesting thing is that it's all Western United States. There's virtually none on the eastern side of the United States. The western side is packed and carries all the weight.
Okay, what's that telling us?
Yeah, is that a data collection artifact, or is the West Coast more busy in the sky at night?
It's not necessarily the West Coast, just the western half of the United States, and it does practically draw a line. I'll include a map for you, Blake, to have in the show notes that kind of shows the division. But there's less light pollution. There's more rural areas that have less light pollution. There's more just wide open spaces and kind of the
big sky.
Yeah, all year temperate weather that draw people outside for recreational activities. So there's a bit more outdoorness on the western half of the United States, and people are looking up as they're going out at night. And so they're going to see more. so it is interesting that there's this really sharp line drawn, but it's also not all that interesting when you start tying it to explainable events. You can go to something as simple as Area 51, and people have been seeing stuff like that for years. Now, the U.S. government actually acknowledged the facility for the first time in 2013. And many of the reports matched up with the dates and times of flights of experimental aircraft that were classified at the time. Mm-hmm. So it does line up. Roswell is another big one. And that one, as we know, did come out that was a multi-balloon project looking to basically find Soviet nuclear tests. And they just tried to call it a weather balloon. But the sightings match up with an actual explainable event. Now, looking at all this data, they're not trying to say that they know what people are seeing, just that people are going to see more when they have the opportunity to. And I think that that's a really important quote. They will see more when and where they have opportunity to.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of a powerful quote there. Now, what they're seeing, isn't always so easy. This new force is a public self-reporting system. Now, they do have staff that they remove what they consider to be obvious hoaxes, as well as highlight what they call a small subset of potentially interesting credible cases. And this next sentence, I hate to read it out loud. Credible cases reported by trained observers, such as pilots.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Yeah.
That old chestnut.
That old chestnut.
Yeah.
Yes. We know pilots that will automatically say we are not trained observers. We took no courses in observance. So for them to always say that trained observers, that old chestnut. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's this staff that are looking for UFOs are deciding what they think are obvious hoaxes. And they're highlighting the small subset of credible cases. To me, that's like saying, well, not all orbs, are ghosts. Some are gods.
It's really legitimizing them, isn't it? It's really saying, well, we have all of these examples, and some of them are better examples than others.
Yes.
Of something spurious to begin with. But I'm wondering about this just being the western portion of the country. I'm assuming the bulk of these cases or sightings are coming from California, or a bunch from Nevada, New Mexico. Is there
it pretty
focus?
Much goes from Colorado over to California, and it's just a line right down the center of the U.S. basically, and it looks like they're all fairly equal in the amount of sightings that happen in this half of the U.S. So it's not largely California. It's not largely Nevada.
Interesting.
It is over this entire region. And it really does, you've got less light pollution. You've got things that are close to airports and military installations and stuff. So people, there's more technology in the sky than ever before right now.
But it also, this kind of quantity of data raises all kinds of interesting sort of questions about who are the reporters and what barriers to entry are there. So like if you want to report, you have to set up an account. And if you do have to set up an account, is there any way to sort of geolocate where the users who are reporting are coming from? So if they have a predominance of users who log into the site are from west of the Mississippi, then there's going to be a selection bias just based on the population reporting. So that's kind of I'm curious on how that works exactly. And
or maybe it's just one person who's made 98,000 sightings.
It would be interesting. I mean,
my father-in-law. Yeah,
I've done a lot of work looking at, I've done a lot of work looking at the BFRO's database, and it's so frustrating because they've got one of the most active Bigfoot reporting databases, but the form they're using is an ASP Classic form. There's no data validation. So people put all kinds of crazy information. They're reporting a story that happened to them 30 years ago. It is the same form for they're reporting a story that happened 2 weeks ago. And it's like these historical reports and these
big difference.
Fresh, very different. Yes. And it's like, I wish that they had sort of tightened up their form, because it's an onerous amount of work to try to convert that into anything that you could do data analysis on,
Right.
So
that's the sad truth. Is this really meaningful at all? I mean,
it's garbage.
It's interesting
garbage
to
out.
talk about.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. There are plenty of problems with this. So it's like when you first read it, it's like, oh, this is kind of startling. And then you think about it a few minutes and you're like, no, it's not.
Well,
not so much.
Yeah, it's like taking a poll. All we need to do is make a quick poll and we can find out the answer to this important social question. Except that as soon as you start doing it, you realize, well, poll questions have, they have inherent biases built into them, and people game the system, and some people are jokers. And, it's really hard.
Are you polling a university, or are you polling a retirement home?
Exactly. Yeah. There's so many factors. People are complicated, and data analysis is complicated. And if only it were that easy, it really would be great. But it isn't, and it's complicated. And maybe that's good. But I commend them for having a look.
Interesting news story.
There's going to be an interesting spike, I imagine, in these kind of reports over the past couple of months, because people were out looking for meteor showers and the eclipse and then people Northern Lights, all that sort of stuff. It's like suddenly people were reminded there's a sky, and you can look away from your phone and see it. So I mean, remember every time we've had major regional power outages, you get all kinds of strange reports where people don't know, what is this thing I'm seeing? Welcome to the night sky that we've been hiding from you with technology for a century. So
yeah. Well, there's always something in the news.
So true. But this was fun. I like doing these sort of real time visits because I mean, we've talked for more than a decade about using critical analysis and how to read a news story and how to look at a claim, and I think try to apply that here and just sort of talk through it. It's kind of fun. I don't know the true answer to any of these mysteries. There's I have caveats to all of them, but this is exactly the sort of thing that thrills me to investigate, look into, and think about.
Oh yeah, and clearly everyone else out there is interested in these too, because these stories keep cycling through, and these topics are always in the news. So it's not just us.
All right, well, thanks for getting together, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll be back soon with more.
Take care.
Monster Talk.
You've been listening to Monster Talk, the science show about monsters. I'm Blake Smith.
And I'm Karen Stolzno.
You just heard a discussion about 3 recent news stories with myself, Karen, and Matt Baxter. I put links to all these in the show notes if you'd like to do more inquiry on your own. Around the world, people report monsters. But are they real? Join the detective of the impossible, Joe Nickel, as he walks you through investigations to reveal often surprising natural explanations behind some of the most famous cryptids and legendary animals ever reported. Using scientific skepticism, meticulous fieldwork, and historical deep dives, Joe Nickel seeks out hidden clues and real-world candidates that sometimes reveal that even the most unlikely monster stories may have a basis in reality. The Science of Monsters is the first book from Monster House LLC, the publisher of science shows Monster Talk and In Research Of. The revised edition is now on sale and includes corrections and suggestions from you, our listeners, and now readers. Sales of The Science of Monsters directly benefits Monster House and its podcasts, thanks to the generosity of its author. Pick up the revised Science of Monsters today at Amazon.com, available in paperback and Kindle editions. Monster Talk theme music is by Pete Stealing Monkeys, and all these years later, it still sometimes manages to give me chills. Thank you so much for listening.
This has been a Monster House presentation.